One. Okay. Um, the uh, the the steps that we took outside in the patio at Fox's were leading to a conclusion as to how this should proceed. And again, I have to emphasize, if you're going to say that the third wave began um, with Dickie Scruggs down in the South, why don't you pick it up a little bit and head toward head toward the east a bit, and Foxton, Moissey, and Louisville, Kentucky, because that is exactly where it began. Foxton, Moissey, and I sat there in the back, and we decided, and I don't know at what point, but he said, "Look, uh, if I were trying to help my client out, and I am, and you were my client, I would say you go and get your documents and we'll return them to White, Tarrant, and Combs, because you apparently were in violation of what they told you to do. You took some documents, so we're going to make it right. And what you should do is make it right. Go back wherever these documents are, and you seal it. You make sure that nobody can get to it, and then after you have sealed it very well, you make certain that those documents can't be seen by anybody, and then bring them to my office. And that is exactly the procedure. And I followed it to a T. I took every document I could that I had in that particular place, and to Fox's knowledge, this was the only. But I imagine, just imagine that if you're going to be dealing with gangsters, as they were, and you knew, and I knew, that they were capable of some very serious activity. It's a world organization. These people don't give in. They don't give up. And if they're going to be beat some way, you're not going to be the one who does it. And today you can say the same thing. But in any case, what I did was I brought the documents. I sealed them, and he just put them in a room right next to his desk. There they were, and they were marked by me to go to Wyatt, Tarrant, and Combs, and that's what happened. And so on in the summer, by then it was approaching summer, and I called him a couple of times, and we got close to. I don't remember. It was perhaps in June, and I had I had in my mind going down to visit my mother in Mississippi, and actually I was going all the way down to the Gulf Coast, which was my grandmother's home, my grandfather's home, my step grandfather's home, and the on a Friday afternoon late, a courier was called, and I wasn't there, but Fox had called for a courier. He sent a letter with the box. He knew that nobody at Wyatt Tarrant Combs was going to be there to open the box over the weekend, because that's just the way silk stocking lawyers do. They go do something else, and that actually started the whole thing. A mysterious box, big box, crowded with documents. I don't know how many there were. There were over 10,000. Or, somebody said 10, somebody said 15. I never counted them. I just crammed them in there. They were all hot documents, every one of them, and they were searing. And you knew that they were not going. They're not going to just sit there, and so. With a cover letter, as I understand it, because I later saw the cover letter, a courier service picked it up, brought it over to Wyatt Tarrant Combs late in the afternoon, and then we both were going to go on vacation, and I remember that so well that I was terrified. Fox was in a mood that was generous, to say the least. He wasn't showing any fear, or he was just doing what was right. He was returning the documents. Later, he was criticized for this. He was saying, okay, the Wall Street Journal of all things. Come on, give me a break. The Wall Street Journal comes up later on. They get a Pulitzer Prize for what? For getting information from Dickie Scruggs, which was absolutely, and no equivocation here. This was leaked, not leaked. It was sent to the Wall Street Journal, so they wrote a story about it, and they got a wonderful, wonderful Pulitzer Prize reward. But at that time, later on when they began to cover us, I was grateful for any kind of coverage, because that gave us a little bit of room to not to worry about somebody's going to hit us or take us out or hurt our families or anything of that sort. But what happened was, on that Friday, we both left town. I was given a fictitious name, and he told me, when you get back into town, you call me up. And I forget the name, but it was something like Larry Lantham or Landro or Larry. Call me up at the office, because we have no idea what's going to happen. And lo and behold, he was gone for 2 weeks. I was gone for 2 weeks. Came back, and there had been a number of calls. And guess what? The guy who had gone to Davison with Fox, the Moissey, had been appointed the ambassador to deal with this incredible kind of fine. Somebody gets it. You can imagine it sitting on a desk somewhere. It's got a letter on it. The letter was a demand letter. It was a very simple demand letter. My client says, okay, he's returning the documents. He has had a personal injury separate from the documents. But this is just the way he was treating it. There were two parts to this. And later on, the Wall Street Journal would go bonkers. Motley Fool would go bonkers over this. It sounds like you're engaging in some kind of really big racket here. Well, listen, we were dealing with racketeers. This is what the Justice Department found out. Civil racketeering, by the way. But no, this is criminal racketeering, and we were not doing that. We were giving them back what they were supposed to get. For all practical purposes, that was the only thing that they were going to get. And you remember, there's a book somewhere in here, so there is an issue that follows this, and that comes up a little bit later on. But this was July 9th, I think. We left, and then when we came back, there were messages all over the place, and I met Fox in a Denny's or someplace like that, and we had dinner, and I started guessing what was happening over there, and lo and behold, there was a call from the guy from that new Fox. This was Wyatt Terrence Combs, silk stocking law firm, and Fox was saying, "Okay, you know what? I think these people would be interested." And there was two parts to the letter. One had nothing to do with the other. And why the Wall Street Journal wouldn't get this is obvious. Obviously, they don't go beyond the beanie hat that they wore as a freshman at Harvard or someplace near there. They don't have the intelligence to figure out. He was doing exactly what every lawyer does. You put the client back to where you try to. And yes, there was a little bit of a joke in it. The box was returned, and then the separate part of this is, but my client would like you to know that he's going to file a lawsuit against you. And the surprising part, and I think the ingenious part, is be sure you hold on to these documents that he says are really, really dangerous, because we're going to ask for them back. Yeah, we're going to ask for this because it's evidence of two things. One, he's had a personal injury, and he's had a mental injury by being exposed to this hocus pocus. And you can imagine, I certainly won't disparage the thought. I mean, that was the plan, and that was certainly what happened to me. I had a virus, and I still have it today, 20 some odd years later. But that was those were the two prongs. Here's your box back. Take it. Deny it if you want. And of course they did. They did deny that there was anything in it for a long time. And the first response was, after 2 weeks, listen, we know who this is. I mean, it's not this. We know who sent this. We know who your client is, and so Fox was not identifying me, and of course it was, settle or sue. You can settle any way you want to. Well, what they first offered, and this was kind of silly. Fox was talking about workman's comp, and he said, unfortunately, I don't do workman's comp. This is not workman's comp. This is actually what they offer, and what the offer was. But what we wanted to do was find out what they're going to do. What are they going to do? Well, let me put it this way. After we were put into a period of worry, and this went on. This went on for the rest of the summer, from the time we came back, from the time the box was delivered, and the demand note. And let me just remind you, there was just a note saying the settlement, we can settle with you, and you still got your box. He's coming back he's giving you back your materials, and so that makes it right. And secondly, you can be sure that my client, who has suffered damages, is going to sue you. So if you have some reasonable doubt, just wait, and therefore we'll sue you for the damages, including the damages to the mental state of mind, and having to read this merde, and noticing that it had a lot to do with my life and changing my life. And I suppose we were going to have to wait, and we did. And we waited all summer long. And the time came in September when nothing happened. And so Fox and I got together and said, well, what about the book? And I said, well, I have a copy at home, and I'm certainly willing to put the same thing, put it in it. So I did. I took my book, and I took the book, and to that extent, I took the book, did the same thing with it, but stamped it at the post office so it would be copyrighted. And then I brought it to Fox. The day after they got the book, they filed a lawsuit for an injunctive relief, and that was the beginning of the third wave, Dickie. That was the beginning, not you guys. It was the beginning of the third wave, right there.